All right, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 29 of Destination the Show. My name is JD Cameron here with Jeremy Nygaard. Jeremy, what's up? How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm on spring break. You can see I went
Ah,
somewhere exotic, my basement, and
Hey, I like the casual vibe that you're repping today. This is like a casual Jeremy, like a slightly open button down.
yeah.
What
So
a,
it was my mom gave me this shirt, said it doesn't fit your dad anymore. Would you wear it? And I woke up this morning and I'm like, that shirt looks comfortable. Boom, put it on. My wife says it's because I only wear free T-shirts, like stadium giveaway stuff.
nice.
So that might, but it's comfortable. So
So
I'm
this is
rolling
an
with it.
upgrade for you in terms of how you're presenting yourself.
Yeah.
Really.
Well, yeah. I mean, yep, totally upgrade.
Right on. How
Hey,
are you,
how are
man?
you? Well, yeah, I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm in Pennsylvania,
Mm.
which happens once a month, which is always kind of a bummer because the lighting here is bad and it means a lot of busy work stuff. Um, but pretty good, pretty good. I got so many things I want to talk to you about today, man. I'm excited. Um, before we dig into all the things, some quick housekeeping stuff, ways that you can support the show. Uh, I've really appreciated everyone's support, questions, comments, downloads, all that good stuff. You can find us on YouTube at Destination the Show. You can find us on Twitter at DTS_pod1 and wherever you get your podcasts. We appreciate anything you can do to support the show as we try and grow ahead of the midst of this draft cycle. So, before we talk about all the things, dude, so we both have kids, right? And your kids are older than my kids, but I think, but I'm starting to run into this kids' sports life and how insanely expensive and time consuming and wild it is. And I like need you to tell me that it's going to get better and it's going to be fun and it's not going to be a big pain in the butt for the next 10 years.
I can tell you that there's going to be some fun times. Um, but it so my oldest is a senior in high school. My youngest is a third grader.
Mm-hmm.
And aside from the COVID year, we spend very few evenings at home together. And so that's what you have to look forward to. Yesterday, I just made a run to, the sports store to get baseball stuff for one kid and soccer stuff for another kid. Um, but yeah, my daughter. So we're kind of softball crazy in this town. I
Okay.
told you we made it to girls basketball state.
That's right.
Making it to softball state is not as big of a deal because we do that. I think we've done it like 5 times in the last 15 years.
Okay.
So my daughter's freshman and sophomore year, they went to state softball, and her first year of travel ball. So I think it was 8U or maybe, yeah, I think she was 8. She played like 72 games of softball.
That's too many games.
Oh yeah, it was crazy. Like it was the year before, like when we're like underhand pitching, right? And then I go to this first meeting, and I come home and I told my wife, I said, we don't have any idea what we're getting into. Now
Yeah.
softball,
Okay.
it's the quick pace, so it's double headers, right? So it's like 4 games a week, 2 nights, and then you play these weekend tournaments where you might play 7 games, 9 games. Um, and so it's insane. Now, she's obviously older now. She's decided not to play softball after the basketball run.
Mm-hmm.
But this weekend, I'm going to take my 7th grade son, down to lacrosse for a basketball tournament. Um, it's the 7th basketball tournament that they've had. They've been playing basketball since October 15th.
Dude,
And yeah. So, I mean, it's not going to stop. It's going to keep going.
that's what I needed to hear you say, though, was that you had this moment of like, we don't know what we're getting ourselves in for, because that's exactly how I
Mhm,
feel right now.
mhm.
Okay. Well, I'm excited to chop it up with you on all things baseball. We've got 2 things that we're going to do today. Last week, we had our first like really draft heavy episode, and it was super fun breaking down the top of the class. This week, we're going to do a mock draft already. We're going to go head to head. You versus me. 8 picks each to see who can draft the best squad from the top of the draft board within certain parameters. We'll get there in a little bit. But first, I want to spend some time covering Spring Breakout, man, because we previewed this a little bit last time. Both the Twins and the Brewers have played Spring Breakout games since we last spoke. The Cubs game, unfortunately, was canceled. But did you get a chance to see? Well, let's start with the Twins. Did you get a chance to see the game? What did you make of it? Whose performances did you enjoy? What were your takeaways, man?
Yeah, so that game I was able to watch most of. We're doing some work in the house, and it was the state boys tournament for the state of Wisconsin. So I was in between two TVs trying to watch. So one game overreactions. Xavier Isaac looks like he should be in the conversation of the best hitting prospect in all of baseball.
Yeah.
Right. Which is super cool for the Rays. He was drafted first round, high school, basically first base only, which is the worst profile. Like that pick happened, and I'm like,
we don't like that profile.
Yeah, just based on the profile, I'm like, terrible pick, right? Yep. And he's looked really, really good, and that's how the Rays win games, is by finding dudes like that. So that was my first reaction from that game. As far as the Twins go, I thought Festa's performance makes me think that he's close but not ready.
Mm-hmm.
And there's also something about him that just gives me reliever vibes. And I don't know if that's accurate or what it is exactly. I think the delivery, there's that head whack where you just see it, and it's like typically guys like that are relievers. Now that was the big knock on Scherzer when he was younger, and he's turned out to be an above average starting pitcher, right? So
above average is doing a lot of work. Yes.
Yeah, no, he's one of the greatest ever, and he shook those concerns as a prospect. So I'm not convinced that Festa's a 6-inning guy, and that number, right, is an interesting number that I picked, because I'm like, I wonder how often Festa has gone 6 innings. The answer is 0 times last year, which I was like, maybe that's just the Twins' plan for him. But then I looked at 2022, he did it 6 times. So that trajectory for me is weird.
Yeah.
Moving on from Festa, I thought Charlie Soto, it looks electric, right? But he's so far away. Throws gas. Cristostomo, or however you say his name.
I think you got it. Yeah.
Underwhelming after the early season tweet. I was like, he comes to the game, and I'm like, oh,
you're ready.
And then I'm watching, and I was like, oh. And then, with the hitters, there's a lot to like about hitters, but you're getting 3 opportunities or 2 to see them. But you could see why there's so much to like in that 8-run third inning. I was impressed that Rodriguez didn't strike out at all.
I knew you were gonna say something about that. Yeah.
Well, I'm watching it, and I'm like, okay, I think it was 3-1, and then he takes a strike, and it's like he had like a check swing, but otherwise through 5 pitches he hadn't swung, and I'm like, he's gonna watch strike 3, and then he just kind of bleeds it through the shift,
booped it down the line,
which is fine. Like, get on base, and then I think he walked another time.
Stole the base.
And he did steal a base. I thought it was close. Lee, Martin, Gonzalez all got hits. Severino struck out twice, but he was part of that run that got 8 innings. So I think there was enough in one game to like.
For sure.
I was hoping that there was going to be like pan to the side, and Manfred was going to be in the stands, like shrugging his shoulders. What do we do? It's a tie. But other than that, I thought it was a pretty good showing for the Twins. Even though they did give up a couple home runs, and Charlie Soto didn't look great.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with a lot of that, man. I mean, okay, so let's talk about Festa for a second, because that is interesting. I remember a Twins discussion with you, and Tom Froming, where he was talking about Festa's velo trailing off a little in the latter part of his outings, and he seems like a guy who cannot put on a lot of weight. You know what I mean? I think Festa's really tall. He's 6'6", but I think he's also 190 pounds, right? He's really a wiry dude. And that, I think you highlighted the key question with him. The thing I want to point to that I found encouraging about him is we got stuff plus grades for him from a great account, Thomas Nestico on Twitter, who has his own Stuff Plus model. His fastball graded out at 113, which is really, really strong. Obviously, slider at 111. Changeup was below average at 93, but I think that's what you would expect. Overall, 106 Stuff Plus, which was tops among all the Twins pitchers in the spring breakout game. And that is certainly like that will play as a starting pitcher if he can maintain his stuff through his outings, if he can keep his velo up in the latter part of his outing. So I really think you kind of keyed in on the key question for him. I thought he looked really good. Excited to see more of him, assuming he's going to be starting the season as a starter in the AAA rotation. I think the other headline I would share is that, like, and Nick Nelson wrote about this at Twins Daily, a good piece of like 5 takeaways. I think he was in attendance for the spring breakout game. Everyone kind of lived up to their scouting report, right? Like Soto, absolutely electric stuff. He came up throwing 98, 99. The command wasn't great. That's exactly what I would expect for an 18-year-old making their professional debut. The stuff looked really, really nasty. I think a lot of his developmental goals are going to be around commanding his fastball. So it was really great to see these guys. I would give the whole event a thumbs up. I think the other thing I would, the notes I'd share on hitters where Gabriel Gonzalez looked exactly as advertised. He had a couple of like ridiculous looking swings where he was chasing absolute garbage outside the zone and then getting his barrel to all parts of the zone for one of the Twins' most important hits. And then the other thing, Jeremy, if you've navigated your technical issues, that I would ask you, Brooks Lee looks awfully, awfully good. What are your thoughts been on him over the spring so far? All right, we have lost. Oh Lord. Okay, we have navigated some technical issues. Jeremy, can you hear me?
I can hear you now.
Good Lord. Okay, as I was saying, Brooks Lee looks awfully good this spring, wouldn't you say, Jeremy? What are your thoughts on him? Obviously, he had a hit in the game, but he's looked tremendous pretty much overall all spring.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be like the Eddie Julian thing, right? Where he's going to go to St. Paul, he's MASH, and then at the first sign of a need, it's gonna be him. And what's going to be interesting is hopefully the need's not at third base, but he could play there.
Right.
Hopefully the need's not at shortstop, but he could play there. Could the need potentially be at second base? Maybe. Could there be a need at first base? Is it crazy enough to think that he goes to St. Paul and plays some outfield? Maybe. Mm-hmm. But like certainly he could be the next in line for whenever there's a need. And he's done the job, just like Julian did the job last year. And I think that's exciting for Twins fans. The big difference is there's some compensation that could be tied to Brooks Lee playing well, right? Where he could get a full year of service if he wins the Rookie of the Year. So if something happens in the next 9 days, which with injuries in the Twins, maybe it does, does he still have an outside chance of coming back up? I think he has been reassigned, right?
I don't think so. I think he's still in camp.
So the likelihood would be that he does not break camp, but crazier things have happened. And I would like to think that, he's next in line. And if he can continue playing well, that's good for everybody involved.
Yes. Hard agree on that. Okay, let's move on quick. Talk about the Brewers. The Brewers definitely had one of the most stacked lineups in this whole thing, dude. I mean, it was just a litany of absolute dudes. We can also touch on the fact that Jackson Chourio has been informed that he is making the opening day roster. He is likely to make his MLB debut on opening day. Pretty exciting. I don't think you had a chance to catch this game, but anything jump out to you about the Brewers' performance, guys?
Yeah, I think Mizorowski was the guy that we thought that he would be. Yep. And I think I saw him named to the spring breakout first team
Yep.
today, which is interesting. Um, People aren't going to hit him, not in that game anyway, and maybe not at this level. But he might hit you, which he did twice, right? He might walk you, which he did 3 times. He might fire to the backstop or past his catcher, which he did once,
Yep.
or he might strike you out, which he did 5 times. So I don't have any of the data, and I also don't have the Josh Note data. That, I mean, he got hung with the loss, but I'm curious if you had pitching data on either of those guys.
Don't have data on them, unfortunately. The Brewers player development account did actually like just now put up highlights of their pitchers in the game. So would encourage folks to check that out if you didn't get a chance. I think so here's a parallel I drew while I was getting ready for this one, man. Noth and Soto are really tied together for me from the Brewers and Twins, even though they're different orgs. They looked a little the same in their performances, and that is to say, like a little fired up, right? This was Noth's professional debut also. Looked a little hyped. Fastball was super impressive. He looks a little bigger to me. It was like 97.5 at the top of the zone. And the headlines with him coming out were like, wow, he can really like spin the baseball. And we didn't see a ton of his breaking stuff because he didn't get that much run. But I think those two, Noth and Soto, were selected in back-to-back picks in July, right? 33 and 34 overall, I think. They both have explosive stuff. And I just think that's an interesting pair to track side by side through the season and see how their kind of loud stuff plays out as they kind of get their feet wet in the professional game.
Right. And then as far as hitters go, not a lot of offense. That's disappointing because that's where there were those big names. Black had a triple, Chiriot, Batanti, Rodriguez, Arenamo. They accounted for the 5 hits, but that was all they had. Kind of encouraging. The lineup as a whole only struck out 5 times. Bovee was 2 of those strikeouts, and Cooper Pratt, he got one at bat and flew out. So again, it's like the one game overreactions because the pitchers are going to fire 37, 35. I think Festa threw 35 pitches, Soto threw a dozen pitches or more, and the hitters get to see a handful of pitches in 2 or 3 at bats. So hard to make a lot from the hitters' perspective unless you're Xavier Isaac and you're hitting 2 home runs and a double.
Yep, agree with all of that. Overall, I'd have to say really great idea from Major League Baseball, which is not all that common. So I would commend them for this like inaugural version of this. And I think like people built their trips to spring training around that, right? So like it's a draw for people. It's exciting. It's cooler in a way than the futures game because you get to see all of your guys. So if you're really invested in a system, you can go see a ton of them play and throw all at once. And I really hope they keep that moving forwards because that was definitely exciting across the league.
So you would guess, like I would guess, that Rob Manfred did not have this idea because it was a good idea, right?
It was a great idea.
So it wasn't Rob Manfred that thought of it. And do you think that this is like a precursor to something potentially bigger?
I don't know. My guess would be that they'll kind of slow play this and get a few iterations up and running and done, right? Because something we don't know about is how smoothly or not the whole thing came together. There are a few games that were actually rained out that were kind of a bummer. And like no one's expecting the Cubs game to get rained out in Arizona. So that's just really unfortunate. But I would guess they do a couple of years before they start making tweaks. But there's also no reason you couldn't have like a 2-game series on back-to-back days or make it a best of 3 or whatever you want to do to get more and more guys involved. Because on the Twins side, I wanted to see Zebby Matthews throw.
Right.
I wanted to see Marco Raya throw. He threw the day before, I think, in a minor league game. And obviously you're not going to build guys' schedules around that, but giving even more of a window and like potentially a bigger roster for the event, I think would be really, really fun.
Right. And I just feel like when you have all the teams located in either Florida or Arizona, that you could pretty easily make it into, some sort of 3-game round robin, or just, you put them in groups, you have a round robin thing. And I know the build up and minor league guys don't get there quite as quickly, but to just have it be some more of an event. Theo says in our comments, doesn't the bigger thing already exist, the Futures game? Yeah, but how about we hear about all these guys if you're a casual fan before the Futures game, and maybe the casual fan's not really getting into it. But I think there's the potential to make early mid-March baseball a little bit more exciting, because right now it's not.
Yep. The Twins still have 8 spring training games to play before we start the season. Okay. Anyway, spring breakout, big hit. We liked it. Do it again, please. Let's move on. Let's move into this mock draft exercise. So this is not really a mock draft exercise, but it is. It's so early to be doing this, but I do think this is a fun way to get to know the top of the board in a little bit of a different way, right? So last week we dug into draft content for the first time. Now we're going to do a 16-pick mock draft. So we're each going to select 8 players. And there's a few parameters that you got to follow, right? And now I've shared all of these with Jeremy in advance. I'm not surprising him in any way, but in your 8 picks, you got to take at least 1 prep player. Obviously, at least 1 college player. That's not going to be a challenge with this draft class at the moment. You have to take at least 1 true pitcher. So 2-way players do not count. You cannot take Jack Caglione as a pitcher. It's got to be a pitcher only. And we're gonna alternate picks, right? It's not gonna be a snake draft or anything. We're just gonna take turns. And take about 2 minutes just to talk through like your thought process, who you picked, what position they play, what you like about them, assets of the player, so on and so forth. We're not trying to like get in the head of major league teams. We're not trying to say like, here's what the Brewers might do or the Cubs might do or anything like that. This is just Jeremy and Jamie picking 8 dudes, trying to pick the strongest team, the most stacked team possible. And we'll probably do this several more times throughout the draft cycle with some different kind of wrinkles on the rules. So any questions before we start?
Yeah, how are you going to feel when you lose to me?
This is how it's going to be all season, huh? So I have a question, right? Which is, I think like the only thing I did not think about is we have not talked about who's going to go first. Right. But I think Theo is going to... Theo's, oh, there we go. Yes, look at this. Okay, so if you're not watching, there's a giant wheel spinner on the screen. And I guess that's going to determine who gets the first pick.
Okay. It's got a sound.
This is so tense. Ha!
Good. Now you have no excuses.
Jamie has the first overall pick. Oh, I get applause too. This is incredible. Theo, bravo.
Hold on, Theo.
That was wonderful. I think we should definitely keep that as a feature moving forward. The next time we do this, that was great. Okay. Now that the excitement is kind of worn off, I'm realizing that I have not spent enough time thinking about who I would take at the top of the class. You said what?
I know who you're taking.
You know who I'm taking. I'm gonna stick with my pick from the end of last episode because I think it's the safest way to go at the moment. So. Number 1 overall, I'm going to take Travis Bazzana, second baseman out of... That's okay. You go ahead and write your things down. Travis Bazzana, second baseman out of Oregon State. I think in a really murky class at the moment, he has one of the most well-rounded offensive profiles. Spent time at Driveline in the offseason working on all of his offensive skill set. He's absolutely crushing the ball. The power is taking a big step forward. He has some of the best bat to ball skills in the class. The interesting thing for me potentially is that there's possibly a center field skill set here, which changes the value proposition a lot from second base. Great on base skills. He walked 104 times in his first 124 college games. Like a 465 career OBP, there's just a ton of ways that he can hurt you and do damage and accrue value. So right now, with no like consensus guy, he's the guy I'm going to take number 1 overall that I feel pretty solid about.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the what I expected you to do as
Okay.
soon as the spinner said your name. So no surprise for me with my first pick, and I'm waiting for the page to still load as I am looking for some statistics. But I'm going to take the guy that I think has been the talk of college baseball at this point, Charlie Condon, outfield / first baseman from the University of Georgia. Um, and the reason is because I think it's an elite bat, and where it plays doesn't necessarily matter because the bat will play.
Mhm.
And I'm not going to share too much more of theories because I don't want to give you anything. But as far as stats go, now that they've loaded, he's played 22 games this year. He's got a 5.13 average.
Mhm.
He has hit 14 home runs in 22 games.
That's ridiculous.
And he has walked 23 times and strikeouts 12. So, as the kids like to say, and as I would agree with, he's a dude
He's the
and
dude.
will go off the board very early. 6'6", 216, redshirt sophomore from the prospect hotbed of the state of Georgia.
That's right.
Currently in the state of Georgia. And if I had to put money on who goes first overall in the actual draft, I'm putting it on Charlie Condon right now. I'll play him at third base until he can't stick in the dirt.
Yep. I think that's a great pick. I can't pick any holes in it. He was number 1 in an industry mock draft just this week. I mean, we talked about this last week, but if he keeps up the offense in conference play, there's no way he's going outside the top 3. Okay. Back to me. So we both selected a college player. No one's taken a pitcher yet. No one's taken a prep player yet. I am going to make a strategy play here, and I'm going to go significantly off board at number 3. And I'm going to take Connor Griffin.
Ooh.
Prep, shortstop, outfielder, pitcher out of Jackson Prep, Mississippi, who is currently on the most up-to-date version of the consensus board, the number 9 overall player, but I'm going to take him at 3. Now, this is maybe a little bit of a reach for this point on the board, but in this thought exercise, I don't love another prep the way that I think I love Connor Griffin's tool set. So he, I think at the moment, is the best prep talent in the 2024 class. LSU commit, freaky athlete, 6'4", 210, plus speed, plus skills in center field, or plus glove, excuse me, plus power. The question is the hit tool. He already has, what did we say last week? 40-something stolen bases in his first 14 games of the season.
An insane amount.
So I think he's potentially one of the highest ceiling guys in the class if everything clicks. Like maybe the one guy in this draft with kind of superstar potential. So I'm going to take Connor Griffin because there's no other prep that I'm feeling really, really sticky and confident about right now. So back to you for pick 4, man.
Okay, well, I thought for sure you weren't going to take him, and you were going to take the guy that I have fallen my lap, which is Jack Caglianone, and I take him in as a first baseman, even though he's a two-way guy, and I will let him hit as a first baseman, and really, I don't need to take any more hitters now. I will, because I'll just continue to stack this lineup. I got the best hitter, and now I got the second best hitter, and they're playing across from each other in third base and first base. The other thing that works is that if it doesn't, if the 80 power doesn't play, then I throw him on the mound. And maybe what I do is I have him play first base for 8 innings and then bring him into close on my
There you
team
go.
where he's kind of nasty on the mound. But for me, it's an easy pick. I think the prep guys have a little bit harder wall to climb because the quality's not great.
Mm-hmm.
And I got two guys in the best conference, collegiate conference in America,
Mm-hmm.
and
In America.
arguably, right? I mean, it is. And
Continue.
and so I'm looking at two guys that are basically knocking on the door at Double A immediately while entering my organization. So I thought for sure you would take him, and I
Mm-hmm.
get your strategy. I guess for me, I wouldn't have taken Connor Griffin here, so I would call that a reach for you. But if that's how you felt like I was going to steal your prep guy here, maybe. But I like where I sit after 2 picks.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And so like this is like the fun of the exercise, right? And the fun of like figuring out the strategy. But like as I look at the board, which I realize that we have not put out there for people to consume yet, but we will soon. The next prep isn't till like ranked on the board. We're looking at like 16 and 19 ish, like in that range.
Which is a 16 long. So I feel like unless you're going to load up on prep dudes.
No, it doesn't. The fall off for me in quality right now from Griffin to the next is significant.
Fair.
And so I might surprise you again here. But I guess we'll see. But I'm going back to the college ranks for my third choice. And I think one thing that I'm trying to be wary of, not just in this little thought exercise, but in this draft in general, is overcorrection, right?
Okay.
I think with I think with kind of a variable top of the board, when we see guys have a little rough patch or guys are out of sight, out of mind, we're going to potentially overcorrect, or industry boards are going to overcorrect on them. And so I'm going to take the guy who is still number one consensus on the board, and that is JJ Weatherholt, second baseman and shortstop out of West Virginia. This is probably the best bat to ball skills in the entire class. Had a huge sophomore season last year, hit 449, 517, 787 with 16 home runs and 36 stolen bases. So I love what he can do with Bazana. He moved to shortstop for the season. He has unfortunately been injured, so out of sight, out of mind, right? But if I can have Bazana at second base and Weatherholt at shortstop, or even Bazana kick out to center field, I feel really good about the strength of those up the middle defensive positions. Really nice swing from Weatherholt, incredibly quick hands, good pitch recognition. He was running a contact percentage of over 90% in 2023, which is ridiculous. So I'm not going to ding him just because he hasn't played. I'm going to rely on the eval, going to rely on the bat to ball skills, and I feel like I'm getting really good value there, taking Weatherholt at 5 overall.
Yeah, I like that pick. Weatherholt would have been on my short list for 4 had you gone the way that I expect you to go at 3.
Okay.
But this pick for me, this next pick 6, is going to cross off my pitcher, and I'm going to take left-handed Arkansas pitcher Hagen Smith.
Okay.
In my lineup, I'm scoring runs, and now I'm going to have Hagen Smith throwing the pitches, and he's not going to give up any runs because in his 5 games that he started this year, he's 3-0. His ERA is 157, so he does give up a run and a half every 9 innings. All right, that's fine. In 23 innings pitched, he struck out 50 batters. 50. 50.
That's insane.
That's over 2 an inning. So you can do the math. That's impressive. He's given up only 2 home runs, 8 walks, 4 earned runs, 8 hits in 23 innings. So that's 16 walks or hits in 23 innings pitched. That suggests a whip that starts with a 0. And again, maybe you've noticed a trend, another SEC guy. So I feel really good about where I'm at, because I really like Hagen Smith, and as a lefty, you just that's value. So, um, 95 to 97, touching 100, wipeout slider 85 to 88,
Hmm.
nastiness. Uh, Another guy that could find himself in the conversation for 1-1.
Yes. Love that pick, man. I can't argue with that. Um, it's a great pick, and we talked a lot about who the pitchers might be at the top of the top of the class. And I will say, to give you some credit, that when all of the industry boards that we use for the consensus board are updated by the end of March, beginning of April, I strongly expect Hagen Smith to be in the like top 8. Um, who's a little bit further down to start the season, but he has been absolutely incredible. Um, really, really good pick like that. Okay, back to me. Here's what I'm going to do. Um, I'm going to go into a little bit of defensive mode here. Um, and I want to make sure that I get my pitcher too and you don't double me up, because at the moment, for me, there's a significant drop off after the first 2 guys.
Yep.
So perhaps it will not come as a surprise that I'm going to take Chase Burns, right-handed pitcher out of Wake Forest, with my 4th pick. Um, let's talk about Burns just a little bit. We did spend some time last time around talking about him. Just pound for pound, best stuff in the draft. Um, Absolutely ridiculous. Throws from a little bit of a higher slot. Fastballs up to 102. A ton of vertical movement, but also like cuts that. So there's almost no horizontal movement on that pitch. So it's a really weird, unique pitch shape. Also has a wipeout slider that he throws like 92. It's insane. Um, Kind of a noisy delivery. And last week we talked about questions being around like, what's the third pitch looking like? How's the changeup? Because he hasn't needed to throw it a lot. But I want to point to his last start, Jeremy, because we talked last week about conference play kicking off, and folks getting tougher matchups. And I'm just going to read you a couple of stat lines, if you don't mind, because Wake have really been struggling. One of the really highly touted programs preseason. Chase Burns' last 2 starts have been against Duke and Virginia, both ACC opponents, 2 of the better teams in the country. In those 2 starts, he has thrown 13 innings, given up 4 hits, 2 earned runs, and struck out 27. Um, so absolutely dominant stuff, and he's turned it on against 2 of the best teams in the country when the rest of his team has been struggling. He has front of the rotation potential, so I'm feeling really good about that pick. And I for sure didn't want you to double me up and take another pitcher, because I think it's a little bit of a gap to the next guy.
Yeah, and I 100% was going to double you up and take Chase Burns. So smart on you, which then pushed a guy down for me. Now, this one is not one that we talked about. So I feel like really for the first time, we're going to mention a name in this mock draft or in this mini mock that we didn't talk about last week.
Okay. I'm excited.
And so I'm going with a very toolsy, little more questions, super high upside outfielder from Texas A&M.
No.
Named Braden Montgomery.
No, devastating.
Was that going to be your guy?
Maybe.
Eventually? Love it. So Montgomery was a transfer from Stanford, and he's now at Texas A&M. So I didn't come into this draft thinking I'm going to go all SEC.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, I feel like I'm sticking to I'm doing something and it's working. So just a couple things on Montgomery. As a high schooler, teams didn't know what he would end up. Went to Stanford. He hit 35 home runs at Stanford. Now he's transferred. Not huge as a power guy, has some swing and miss. I think Keith Law had him. Keith Law has him 8 on his board. I saw him on another board as high as 4, which I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
you've seen because you're doing all the boards. And so the thing that Keith Law says is he's riskier than the hitters above him,
Mm-hmm.
but has more upside than the bats after his teammates on Jeremy's team, Condon and Caglianone. So another probably corner guy, which you've went up the middle, right, for your
Mm-hmm.
3 hitters, and I've stayed out of the middle with my 3 hitters up to this point. So
Yep.
Again, another guy with the potential to, if one thing doesn't work out, do another thing.
Yep.
And so Braden Montgomery, more of a roll of the dice because there's fail factor there, but I feel good about it with the 8th overall pick.
I love that pick. I don't mind telling you now that you've taken him that he was going to be my next guy. I think you have hit on another guy who is going to rocket up boards. When the full slate of industry boards are updated by the end of the month, Montgomery's going to be right there. You also might see, if you watch highlights of him, a guy who might have a top 10 arm in Major League Baseball right now. Like, watch him throw from the outfield. It is absolutely ridiculous. It is Matt Wallner-esque.
Wow.
Highly recommend it. He has broken out in a big way, answered a lot of the questions early on the season. I don't, without revealing too much, I don't like the position I'm in right now because I felt very convicted on Montgomery, and I'm between 2 guys for my next pick, which is not exactly where I want to be. And I feel like you're sitting there feeling smug, which is deeply upsetting.
Very smug.
Very smug. Okay, you know what I'm gonna do? Is I think I'm gonna play relatively safe and ride with a consensus at the moment. So for my 5th pick, I'm gonna take first baseman Nick Kurtz out of Wake Forest. Currently still a top 3 player on the consensus board. He has not lit it up to start the season, but a lot of that is being pitched around and walking an absolute ton. We have talked about how we don't really like the first baseman only profile. I think with Kurtz, similar to Condon, he has enough hit and power for that not to matter. 6'5", 230 pounds, hit 37 home runs across his first 2 seasons at Wake. I think he was originally recruited as a pitcher, actually. Really has the potential to have plus hit, plus power, and a plus defensive first baseman. And so if I think about the fact that I already have a bunch of up the middle defensive profiles, I feel like I have that covered. And I can ride with a really safe, strong offensive profile that I know is going to accrue value by getting on base a ton, and not just hitting bombs as well. So Nick Kurtz, my 5th pick, out of Wake Forest. Really quick, just to take stock here. So I've had 5 picks. You've had 4. We've both taken a pitcher. I have taken a prep. You have not. So that is your one requirement in your remaining few picks here.
Yep. I'm not going to do it here. And as a matter of fact, and like you went here, you said I'm going to stick with the board. I'm going to go with Nick Kurtz. Nick Kurtz probably would have been my pick because it's like at this point it's a value pick.
Yeah.
And so the next name on my list, so Kurtz was the last in that tier.
Mm-hmm.
And now I look at the next tier and I like all 3 guys. I figure I'm gonna get 2 of these guys,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I'm gonna take the one that I like the most, which just happens to be another freaking hitter from the SEC, and that's Tommy Tanks White from
Oh,
LSU.
interesting.
Probably the most famous of the really maybe all the guys that are drafted burst onto the scene at North Carolina State, was just crazy, hit 27 bombs or something as a freshman,
Mhm.
and then enters the portal and joins LSU, who becomes the national champ. Didn't play as much last year. In fact, there was some like, I feel like even in the College World Series, there was he not playing or wasn't getting at bats, or it was kind of weird. So he went from batting well, he batted 374 last year. He's only hitting 321 after hitting 51 home runs coming into this year. He's got 5 in 17 games, which is less than his typical
Mhm.
production. But he doesn't have Dylan Cruz in his lineup this year. He doesn't have Trey Morgan in the lineup this year. Uh, but for me, I am a big fan of him.
Mhm.
Maybe he's a little overranked just because of being so well known. But here's my dilemma. And this is kind of a Rocco, I'm not going to worry about it till I got to worry about it thing, right? Where I have Condon potentially playing third base, which I said I would do earlier. I got Cagliano playing first base.
Tommy
Tank,
Tanks is your DH.
Tanks does have to be DH, but I would try him at third base and move Condon to left field. I got Montgomery in right field. I feel pretty good about those 4 spots.
Yeah.
But not much up the middle, but doesn't matter because nobody's touching Hagen Smith anyway, right? So anyway, Tommy Tanks White
I like that.
is my 5th pick, and I've stuck to the SEC 5 for
Yeah, you
5.
have. Yeah, you have. I
Yeah.
bet you can't make it 8 for 8.
I can't because I got to take high school yet.
That's really interesting, right? Because we actually did not we didn't like put any stipulations here about like you have to try and cover every position on the field. That's just a little
Right.
bit how it's kind of worked out with some diversity in these picks. That is not who I thought you were going to go with, Tommy White. If I had to prognosticate a little bit, I think he might end up more in the like teens to 20 range when it's all said and done. I could be
Totally
wrong.
fair. Yeah. No, I can see that too because he's kind of a one-trick guy.
Yeah, but it's, I mean,
It's the most important trick.
right. 100%. Like if he hits and he hits for power, no problems. I'm going to take a risk here because I feel like I've been set up to do so, and get a little bit boom or bust. I'm really going heavy on one team, which I don't love, but it is what it is. And it's also one team that has performed unevenly. I am going to go back to
Wake Forest. Yeah, you are.
I'm going back to Wake Forest, and I'm going to take Seaver King, who, like, it's hard to even define a position for. I think most likely long term, it's going to be center field. So Seaver King is a really interesting story, and I'm excited to talk more about him through the draft process. He transferred from Wingate last season, which is a D2 school, and is just kind of has like a ton of raw talent and tools, right? Was a big transfer get for them. Had like a 47 game hit streak last season in D2 baseball. But has also mashed on the Cape, which is exciting. He hits the ball really hard. Exit velocity is around like 112 miles per hour early this season. He does chase quite a bit. He also has good bat to ball skills, which kind of ameliorates that a little bit. This is one where you're going to slow play him a little. Everything's a little bit raw. I think defensively, like we said, center field. He's also gotten reps at shortstop and in the infield. I think one of the most fun prospects to track in the entire draft class, and another guy who's like a little bit Connor Griffin-esque in that it would be scary if he puts it all together. But there's definitely some kind of boom or bust potential there. But Seaver King for me, easy power, plays defense at another up the middle defender for me. I'm gonna move Bazana back to second base and put him in center field. He will be my 6th pick.
Yeah, he was actually. So I said I had a list of 3. Seaver King was the second guy on my list.
Okay.
And I find it funny as an outfield second base type where it's like, could he play shortstop? And then I click on his profile on MLB.com and I'm like, dude looks like Mookie Betts.
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
And I know you hate comparisons, so that's the only reason I'm saying that.
That's a mean comparison to hang on a kid.
Well, mean comparison from a guy that's went from Wingate to Wake Forest to hang a 5th-round draft pick out of high school who just turned out to be a really good bowler and a really good baseball player. I get
Yep.
that, but I think that's a really good pick at that
That's a
point in
really
time.
good bowler.
And so the last guy on my in my tier here is Vance Honeycutt. So I'm going to get my center fielder, and I was high on Honeycutt early when we talked way early in the process.
Yep.
Center fielder from North Carolina. The question is, how well is he going to hit? He's a really good defender. He's a ESPN top 10 guy with some of the things he does. He's batting .317 right now. Actually has 6 home runs and has 12 stolen bases and 14 attempts. So is he going to strike out too much? I mean, it's 27 times in 21 games right now. And how many walks does he have? All of 17. So there's a little bit of concern, but I feel like when I have hitters all around him, there's not going to be a huge need to get on base all the time. And when he gets on base, he could steal a base, or he could just wait for the next guy to hit a home run, which is what's going to happen with a lot of my guys. So I went out of the SEC, stuck to college, still got to get my prep guy. But Vance Honeycutt to me was the last guy in that tier that I couldn't pass on.
Now we're in tough territory. I like that pick for you a ton. Really good, like outstanding defense, good speed. That's a good one. I thought Honeycutt was who you're going to go with. Makes sense at the moment, like via consensus, as well as getting a guy in a defensive position of value. I think I need like a 30-second pause here. I think I am going to go off board significantly.
It's only significantly off board if he's not on my board, and I have a feeling like he will be.
He'll be on your board. It's not that significant. But we're on what, the 7th pick right now. So
Yep.
I'm interested in taking risks. So I'm going to take a risk, and I'm actually going to take a second prep player.
Might make my decision easier now, huh?
I'm going to take a second prep player. And it's just someone I want to highlight as someone I think is going to kind of surface and rise up boards when we get an update here. He's another two-way player.
You son of a gun.
Another two-way player. I'm going to take Bryce Rayner as my 7th pick. He is a shortstop and right-handed pitcher out of Harvard Westlake in California. Legitimate two-way guy. This is the same high school that produced Pico Armstrong and Max Fried. 6'3", 195, great athlete. Some scouts prefer him on the mound. Some prefer the offensive profile. Really nice on kind of effortless, like 95 on the mound. Good breaking pitch, curveball slider combo. And then good defensive shortstop, really good bat speed, fast hands. He can do a little bit of everything. And I just like the tool set he brings, the well-roundedness he brings, reading the tea leaves. He is going to be a guy who is rising up boards here in the next month or so. So Bryce Rayner for me with my 7th pick.
Yeah, that's a great pick. That would have been my 8th pick because I assumed you weren't going prep. You reached for a prep with your 2nd, and then steal my guy. So I'm going to take the chance that you're not going to take a 3rd prep because I know who I'm going to take. It was 1 for me. 1 and 2 were relatively close. You got both of them. Now is where the drop is, but I feel like I like my 3rd guy a little bit more.
Okay.
What I'm going to do with this pick, though, is I am going to get that second pitcher, and I'm going to go with Big Ten's Brody Brecht from Iowa. We talked a lot about Burns and Smith. We mentioned Brecht because he's kind of in that same tier, but just below. I don't have his current stats pulled up, but he's up to 101, sitting 97 to 99. love the data. People love the data on his pitches. Used to be a football player, and I think whenever there's football guys, there's upside there, just because you're now focused on that. And he's from Iowa. And if you've ever been, he's from Ankeny, Iowa. Have you ever been to Ankeny, Iowa?
Never have. Probably never will.
So it's interesting because I don't remember which of the gas, like there's a little history lesson. There's the is it General Sam's? I don't know. Anyway, there's a bunch of gas stations, and the owners are, God, I wish I could think of what it is.
It's a great history lesson so far.
Anyway, they're from Ankeny, so their money all goes back into the city of Ankeny. So you can drive through it, and it's like, oh, there's the old part, and then you just keep driving, and it's like, there's the really new part, there's a new part, there's a new part, and it's a really neat city. But we had some friends that mom lived there, so we had stayed in Ankeny. Anyway, that's where Brody Brecht is from. Now he's pitching for the Hawkeyes. You get the Midwest weather, so if you're a northern person like we are, you get added points for that because you can go pitch in the climate. And I like pitchers, and so Brody Brecht for me is my choice at 7. And I don't know if you're going to take another pitcher, but I like my hitters better than yours, even if I have less than them. And now I like my pitchers more than yours too, because I have 1 and 3, and so I feel pretty good about that.
Okay, that's fair. That's interesting that you brought up Ankeny, Iowa, because there is another prospect in this class who is extremely promising on the prep side, named Joey Oki, who is also from Ankeny, Iowa, who is committed to Iowa, and I think will be a day 1 pick. We'll talk about him more a different day. Okay, I have one more selection. I've covered all my bases in terms of college, high school pitcher. I'm now, Jeremy, in the mood where I'm feeling less in competition with you and more just like a desire to talk about guys I am interested in. So I am again going to go off board a little. I am going to take a second pitcher.
Okay.
I'm going to take a second pitcher. It's mostly because this is a guy I really want to talk about. He is a draft prospect I have definitely fallen for in the early going of this season. Right-handed pitcher out of East Carolina named Trey Savage, 6'4", 225, and just like a ton to like. East Carolina has a really nice track record with college pitchers. If you're a Twins fan, you'll know Gavin Williams, who pitches for the Cleveland Guardians. He was out of East Carolina. Carson Whisenhunt is another notable recent selection. He's really athletic, like a high slot kind of guy, and just like a really well-rounded arsenal that makes me confident he's going to start at the next level. Fastball is 94 to 96. He's been as high as 98, has a ton of carry. So it's kind of like that modern, trendy, analytical fastball. A really nasty kind of slider cutter hybrid, with just like a ton of late break. Also has a curveball. I think that pitch had the best whiff rate of any of his pitches in 2023. And a changeup that's above average. So like really diverse arsenal. Struck out 34% of hitters last year and walked 7%. You can sign me up for that any day. I think he's another guy that's going to start to kind of trickle up on boards. He was kind of in the 20 to 30 range in a lot of preseason boards. I think he's going to be firmly in between 10 and 20 on a lot when they get their March, April updates. So Trey Savage is going to be my last pick. Over to you to finish this off, man.
So my last pick, and I had some things queued up for this one. Also, it's Casey's gas station.
Okay, there we go.
Casey's. So the prep guy that I'm going with, Caleb Bonemer, a prep from Michigan. Right now, shortstop, maybe a third baseman. Hit tool. Is he gonna stick it short? I don't know. But when you're rolling the dice on a prep guy, there's a lot to like about him. And so strong, projects for plus power. You could probably give more information on him because I think he's going to be a top 20-ish pick. It's just it's so hard with these prep guys because they're always there's a lot of is it like, what's the price tag going to be? I don't even know if I don't see a commitment. Like there's a lot of questions about what can happen with a prep guy between now and draft day. He could end up being a 7th round pick and going, wherever he ends up. So
Yep.
As far as prep guys go, you got my top 2 picks, but I'm happy with my 3rd.
Yeah, I like Bonnemer. I think it's a good pick. I think Virginia is the commitment for him. I could be wrong. That's just off the top of my head. He's someone who really blew up over the summer and kind of went from nowhere to like suddenly he's a first round name and even a top 20 name. And he's certainly in that first like 5 to 10 group of prep prospects in what's a little bit of looking like a weaker class, but I like that. So like this will be interesting, Jeremy, and maybe we can put out a poll for this or survey people, but just like looking at the board, I'm feeling good because I have the top 3 names on the board. You have guys actually almost uniformly who have performed really well this season, and you have this kind of cluster immediately in the middle, and then I have some more guys again a little bit further down. So happy with my team. I think you're happy with yours. That was a fun thought exercise, man. I enjoyed that.
So what's really interesting, and I don't want to share too much, but when I didn't know if I would pick first or second or if we were going to go snake draft or back and forth, my plan was I got to be strong up the middle. And it totally failed because you took the first guy that I was going to take, and I'm like, well, I got to take Condon, right?
Yep.
Took another up the middle guy, which put someone in my lap that I didn't see coming. You went back up the middle.
That's right.
I'm like, well, I'm going to get my pitcher. So
I value my defense in this draft.
Yeah, you did, and I'll hit it over the fence where the defense doesn't matter.
All right, Jeremy, let's finish up. We did get a great listener question. Maybe you wanna read this one, and I can take this one.
Yep.
So we started to get like in the weeds draft questions. Has me excited.
So this is from Twitter user, I believe it's Dave Sims fan.
Yeah, I think so.
At first, I was like, is it Dave's Sims fan? But Dave Sims fan, he says, not a Twins fan, but love the podcast. My question is, who would you pick right now between Ben Hess and Drew Beam if forced to choose one or the other? How do you think the current profile of these two could/will change between now and draft day? This is way up your alley because you've been doing the research on these two.
Dave Sims fan, you have made my day with this question because it's just like the perfect amount of in the weeds for right now. And I actually think it's a really interesting question. So let's start with their rankings at the moment. So Drew Beam's like composite ranking is like 25.4, and Hess's is a little further down the board, 38.2. You pick 2 guys that have really kind of distinct and different profiles. So let's talk a little bit about them and the kind of pros and cons here. So Hess is a big dude. We'll call him like a Lance Lynn body comp, maybe. He is a starting pitcher at Alabama, has had some injury concerns, decent mover on the mound. The stuff is really loud, like 94 to 96 on the fastball, can grab 99 with good run and ride. Pair of breaking balls. The arm talent and the stuff, I think, to be a really good big league starter, needs better command, or I think folks would like to see him demonstrate better command, and needs a clean bill of health because both of his last 2 seasons have been cut short by injury. So that's Hess. Beam is very different. He's a starting pitcher at Tennessee. He's still got some projection, I think. He's 6'4", 210, 205 maybe. Like one of the higher floored college pitching prospects in this draft, had a velo jump in 2023, fastballs in the 93 to 96 range, can get up to 98, but really sitting in that like 93, 94 range most of the time. Ridiculous changeup Drew Beam has, like one of those like fade monster changeup that just like sinks and hitters swing over. It's really beautiful. That looks like it's going to be a plus pitch, if not already. Solid curveball. He had a walk rate of under 7% last season, so commands the baseball really, really well. So just like a strong overall arsenal and really good command. The thing about Beam is he gives up a lot of contact that makes me wonder if he's in the strike zone too much. I think it was like 30 hits through 24 innings so far this year. That's too much. And they're just getting into conference play. So a couple of things that I would bear in mind before like making this decision, right? When we're thinking about guys, thinking about what they can be, not about what they are now. So Drew Beam is giving up too much contact, but what would it look like if he didn't? Ben Hess isn't commanding the baseball as consistently as you might want him to. What happens if he was? And then I would also think about like, what does your org do best when it comes to development? I think this guy who asked this question, Dave Sims fan, is a Mariners fan, right? So you're doing well when it comes to pitching development. I think until I see a bit more consistency, I'd probably go with Beam and trust my development people to have him missing bats a little bit more, continuing to work on the stuff and command the baseball a little more outside of the strike zone and work on beating people in the strike zone. I think I would go Beam. It's close. It's a good question. If Hess pitches to his potential, I think that answer will be different by the end of the season.
And it's good that he's not a Twins fan, because if he was a Twins fan, he's not going to get either of those guys, because Twins don't take pitchers in the first round.
You know, someone's going to clip this. Someone's going to watch this, clip this, and absolutely ring you up when they do take a college starting pitcher in the first round for like the first time ever.
So they're going to hold that. They're going to hold that until the next regime comes in, and
can't wait.
Ain't happening, man.
It is unlikely. It seems unlikely that will happen. Hey, there's a nice class of college pitchers in that range. We will see. Anyway, dude, this was super fun, man. It was a lot of fun. We will continue to dig into probably like half episodes of minors stuff and half episodes of draft stuff as the season gets going here. We're actually starting minor league games here in the next 2 weeks, which feels incredibly exciting. So we can track some of these prospects we've been talking about so much. We will be back with another episode next week. Until then, enjoy the first game of the season tomorrow morning from Korea. Take it easy.
Are you gonna watch that tomorrow morning?
Oh, well, I have to be up anyway for work, and my first meeting is until like 9. So in my hotel room. Let's go.
I'll get up and watch it. All right. Sorry, I ruined your closing.
All good. Take it easy, y'all.